Hello everybody, welcome back to another Force Death video for the channel. I know it's been a while since I uploaded. I've just been really busy with my job and personal life issues getting in the way of things, but I wanted to make a video for the holiday coming up, Halloween, where I decided to rank all the horror anime that I have seen. So if your horror anime or a really big horror anime isn't on this list, it's either I don't consider it horror or I haven't seen it. There's some anime that I have seen, like Attack on Titan, that could be made the argument for being horror because the Titans being pretty creepy and unexplained in the beginning. And while I would agree that the first season, or at least the first couple, do have some horror elements and do have some creepy ones throughout the whole series, I think so much content of the series really focuses on being action and psychological warfare that I'm not really counting it as like a horror show. You could definitely have action. I have Berserk on this list from the 90s here, but I feel like this the majority of Attack on Titan really is just mature shonen. I say mature shonen being seinen, but it's a shonen that's like borderline seinen and doesn't really have much horror qualities to it, at least for the majority of the series. So I'm going to be talking about everything I have here listed. I'm going to be ranking it, I'm going to explain why I ranked it, and we can just get right into it. We'll start with one that a lot of people know, and my ranking of it might be a little bit upsetting and controversial, but it's Higurashi When They Cry. So, I have talked about this series basically saying that I think that the first arc is phenomenal with how Reina and I even forget the green haired girl's name. But just Rena and like the green haired girl, how they really fuck up Keiichi's like perception of everything. It like how they really screw with his mind. You can tell like something is not like going right in this town of Hinamizawa. Oh, Mion, that's her name. Mion, Mion and Rena. When they just you can tell that there's something off with these two in the first arc, and like one moment they'll be really sweet, the next moment they'll just be insane. Like, I'm gonna kill you if you don't do what I say. I'm gonna kill you if you make one wrong step in this town, city boy. That's basically what they're like to Keiichi, and I think the first arc is phenomenal, but the rest of the series just did not live up to the first arc. And I've watched past the first series. I've watched Kai, which is the second series, which isn't really horror, more mystery and revealing like what was actually going on in the first series. I've watched Go, I've watched Kira, I've watched all this, but the only part that really struck me as pure horror and really affected me being like super creepy is the first arc of the whole series. I don't think we have come close to matching that. Closest that I think personally for being really creepy that matched it was the first arc of Go. So, and if you know, you know. So, with Higurashi, it's not really a series that I think of super highly when it comes to being creepy. I know I'm already starting it off with a very controversial take, but a lot of the series I kind of find unintentionally funny or just downright stone face, not affecting me whatsoever. Granted, I am used to a lot of horror shows, and I know this show has freaked out a lot of people, so I'm not saying it's bad by any means because I've watched so much of it and do like it, but when it comes to horror, I'm just don't think that this show really resonates with me personally. I'm going to put it in the B tier because I do like actually the second series a lot more with how like it goes into the mystery of things and explains a lot of what we've seen in the first series, but ranking it on horror standards, it's probably on the lower end, but overall, I think the series is good, and I do think you should check it out. People do say it is the best horror anime in existence of all time. I personally would disagree, but there's a reason why people do say that. Next, we'll go to Yami Shibai. So, Yami Shibai is basically like Japanese Goosebumps, where there isn't a plot that's really happening. It's more so these episodes contain short stories that are like short horror stories that you could like watch on YouTube that are explained like in 4 or 5 minutes. I overall think that it's pretty engaging. There's some stories which are but some of them are actually really creepy. One of them really freaked me the hell out. It involved this merry-go-round that appeared in this really creepy transformation. I thought it was pretty good. But Yamishibai, because it covers so many different stories, some can be hits, others can be misses. And I think that it does have its fair share of both of them. Uh, if I had to rank Yamishibai, it's hard because there's just so much of it, and it's tough to rank it because it's not like it follows one story, like I said. It's multiple. It's an anthology series. I'd probably put it in C because a lot of it isn't super great, but there's a lot of it that I personally like that maybe not the majority of people would like. It does have some pretty good stories. I've heard that the newer Yamishibai seasons haven't been that great. I've only watched the first few, but I'll just put it in C just because I don't think it's anything super amazing. It's just a bunch of short stories that, oh, it might creep you out or it might jump scare you once. I like it, but it might not be everybody's cup of tea. We're gonna probably put one up next that not many people might know about. It's because it's an anime that's airing right now, and it's called Dark Gathering. I believe it's on episode 17, which I just watched that came out yesterday. Dark Gathering is very weird because people were saying this is going to be a horror anime that will be really scary. This has a lot of creepy imagery, and they're right about that. But what kind of dampens the scares about Dark Gathering is one moment it'll actually put a really creepy scene, and the music and the shots really amplify the creepiness. They'll be walking down a tunnel. It'll show the main character's girlfriend, Aiko, holding his hand as they walk. And then he'll mention, hey, why are you gripping onto me more tightly? And he'll turn around and he'll see that she still hasn't entered the tunnel. She's still right outside the tunnel. So something was touching him this whole time. And that I really like, how the show builds up the suspense or will make things seem normal. And in a quick second, you'll be like, holy fuck, something's wrong here. This isn't what we were expecting. So it does that very well, but it's also paired with a lot of slice of life moments that are similar to something like K-On! Or the typical anime where like their eyes get really big, where their facial expressions get very exaggerated to portray comedy, and there is a lot of comedy in this that does dampen the horror aspect where we'll see something pretty disturbing or pretty creepy and follow it immediately with like a subplot or the same characters even where they'll crack a joke or they'll freak out and they'll draw their expressions in a comedic way. So I'm not saying that the show is bad by any means because of that. It's just you have to go in knowing that it's not going to be a show that's going to be pure scares. Higurashi also does the same thing to an extent where there will be cute moments that you'll see them like have a picnic, and then later there'll be like pins or needles or whatever in the rice balls that someone will eat that they'll place. So Higurashi does the same, but I think Higurashi does it better where it will separate the cute scenes from the horror scenes versus something like Dark Gathering where they will both be implemented in the same scene, or like a plot A will be happening where stuff's creepy and then a plot B will be happening where stuff is like lighthearted and fun and they go right back and forth between each other instantaneously. So you don't really know which feeling you're supposed to feel while watching this show, and I think that's its biggest drawback. But it's basically how I would describe it, Pokemon, but with ghosts. Dark Gathering is about a group of some college students and their and the main girl's little cousin, where they go hunting for spirits because this little girl here, Yayoi, had her mother captured by a spirit, and she wants to find the spirit that captured her mother. So she's capturing all these other spirits to build a team to fight against her and to fight against the spirit that took her mother. And I think it's a really cool premise, and a lot of the fights and encounters they come across are really interesting. They're all tying to, like, I don't know if it's 100% true, but, like, places where, like, ghosts are reported in Japan they go to, and they capture these spirits, and sometimes they have to go through really grueling and disturbing and creepy things to capture them. So I think it has a lot of potential as a show. I think it's a fine show. It's just, as a horror show, really feel like it's going back and forth between, like, really creepy stuff, some of the creepiest stuff you'll ever seen in anime, and then stuff that's super lighthearted. But the premise is nice. It's about catching spirits, using them to fight other spirits, but at the same time having really creepy aspects going. It's not just like a pure Pokemon like I Choose You, Ghost Number 5, kill this spirit that lives in the tunnel that kills people. So I would rank this show probably. I'd probably give it in the same tier as Higurashi a B. Even though I was saying that Higurashi does the balancing of cute stuff and funny stuff with horror better than Dark Gathering, I still think Dark Gathering's premise is really cool. Next, I'm going to rate one that I think is pretty bad, and that's the Ito Junji collection. So, Ito Junji, or Junji Ito, as a lot of people call him in the West, myself included. Junji Ito is this horror mangaka that makes pretty notable works such as like Uzumaki, which is getting an anime adaptation, Tomie, Gyo. He has a ton of short story collections that released into the West. I own a lot of his books. I really like his art and how he's able to draw stuff in such a disturbing way while also telling pretty creepy stories. Some of his stories really aren't that interesting, and you can tell after a while reading a lot of his stuff, knowing like where the story is going to go. But this anime just does not capture the good stuff about Junji Ito at all. His art style is very tough, I feel, to adapt, and that's why this Uzumaki anime is taking so long to come out, because they're really trying to perfect his style. His style in at least this collection was not captured. It is very watered down. The stories, how they're like written, they feel very rushed. It doesn't give you the same feeling of dread and creepiness as opposed to reading the story. It's not something I would recommend. I feel it's very inferior to his works, and if you were to experience Junji Ito, I would tell people to read his manga instead of watching the collection. So I'm going to put the collection at the bottom tier just because it's not that great. Next, we'll be rating one that I really like, and I'm going to put an S tier, Serial Experiments Lane. Now, some people debate if this is a horror anime. I personally consider it. It's psychological, it's creepy, it's very eerie. I would definitely consider it a horror. There's many parts in this show where you will feel creeped out, and there's many parts where I at least felt pretty scared. Um, this show is very weird. The best way I could describe it is it's basically akin to Salad Fingers in surrealism, but also capturing the works of stuff like Perfect Blue, being very adjacent, where how you really don't know what's going on unless you pay full attention, and even when you pay full attention, you still might not know what's going on. And this fear of the unknown that's present in the series is, I think, what makes it the strongest thing about it, in my opinion. I know there's like the TikTok crowd that makes depressed Lane edits, and while I do think there is things with Lane that she is fighting with throughout the series, and I think it's done well. For me, what I liked most about this show for me was just how creepy it was, how every episode there'd be something thrown in that made me just go, what is going on in this series? And I think it's just phenomenal, honestly. It's also a show I would say that came out ahead of its time. It basically predicted how we use the internet today, and that's pretty nuts for a show in 1998 to do that. I love the music, and like I said too, the atmosphere, how it feels very dreamy and then slowly becomes more and more technological, where you see technology is just like basically like consuming everything, and like the world and the internet are like merging. And I don't want to say too much about it just in case someone hasn't watched it, but I would consider it an S. I really do think every person who likes anime and who likes horror should watch this show. I think in a medium that really doesn't have that many fantastic horror anime, this is something that you would want to check out. This is phenomenal. You know what? I'm gonna follow it up with another phenomenal one as too. I'm gonna also put Perfect Blue in S tier. This is actually the first piece of anime besides something like Pokemon or Dragon Ball, which I watched on Nicktoons and Cartoon Network as a kid. This is the first anime piece that I actually sat down and watched when I wanted to get into the medium. Really, really creepy movie. There was one reviewer that summed it up saying if Walt Disney and Alfred Hitchcock came together and made a film, it would be this. And I feel like he just said that just because there wasn't really many animated films at the time that went like this. So I feel like that's why he said that. But this one, like Lane, also predicted a lot about how culture is today, especially through the internet. But as opposed to Lane, where it talks about how people get sucked in online, this is more about how people view uh, people on social media as characters that they play in their head and not really take into account how they are in real life. They only see what they post on social media and how they act online or act on stage, but not really how they are in their personal life. And I think the film does an amazing job at that. There's still so much in this film as well that I just don't really know what happened personally. Like, like. There's so much. Even when watching it multiple times, I can't tell someone how Perfect Blue goes, like how things take place, what really happens. I have a general idea, but there's some things that still throw me off. It's like, did this really happen, or did Mima really do this, or was it somebody else? But it's so good. As very good cinematography, very good use of music. Just really creepy, really suspenseful film. Probably the best anime horror film ever made to date. So I would check it out, and I'd still say it's one of the best horror anime of all time. We'll follow with another one that's not as great, Another, which I'll be putting in C tier. Another is basically Final Destination, the anime, and this is also one of the first ones I've seen, one of the first anime I've seen, because after watching Perfect Blue, I wanted to get more into the horror anime medium, and this is what made me realize, wow, horror in anime really struggles, because Another really isn't that great. It has a lot of problems. Some of the kills are very creative, and how people die is pretty cool. Seeing like how their deaths get played out, but the premise, from what I remember, like didn't really hook me that much. I've seen, granted, I haven't seen this show in a long time, so I forget a lot about it. But from what I remember, it's nothing really to mark home about. It was just nothing really special. I don't think I'd ever rewatch it. Maybe one day, but it's not something I would go back to. If you're interested in watching it, you can watch it and see if you might like it, but I don't know. It's very cheesy. It is not scary at all. It's pretty goofy. Um, C tier, Another. That's all I gotta say. We'll do Berserk next. So this is the '90s show Berserk, not the 2016. I'm going to actually put this in A, and I'm putting it in A only for two reasons. One, when it comes to the horror aspect, I don't feel like it can be in the same spot as something like Lane or Perfect Blue. Berserk has a lot of horror, but how the horror differs is that it focuses on these Cthulhu like demon monsters and entities that appear throughout the series, which leads up to the end, which, if you don't know about Berserk, I won't say anything, but leading to the end where you see bits and pieces of these Lovecraftian beasts, it's just insane what happens at the end. The end is like the worst nightmare anyone could ever go through. It's disturbing, terrifying, it's horrific. And unfortunately, I feel like that's what this series, a lot of people think back to, is the end. But throughout the series, there is still a lot of good stuff here. Granted, this period of Berserk that's covered in this '90s anime is probably the least horror specific part of the whole series, because there's like, I think, 5 or 6 arcs of Berserk, and this one is the one that I probably would say has the least amount of that stuff. If you were to look and read the other parts, you would know what I mean. But there is still a lot of horrific themes here, and horrific monsters that do appear. And it's just a really good show overall. I know I said in the beginning of my video that I wouldn't include things like Attack on Titan in this tier list because I think it focused more on action, but I think Berserk really balances out the action and horror very well. It's not just titans that you have to fight against, it's all these weird demons, monsters that Guts has to go up against, and the whole tone is different from something like Attack on Titan. It's a more gritty, dark tone that it has. And I would put it in A only just because we're rating stuff on a horror list. The horror, just for me at least, doesn't match the psychological feel that you get in Lane and Perfect Blue. But I would still consider Berserk a horror series. It might be a horror adjacent with action and drama, but I still say horror is a very important part in Berserk. And I would recommend the manga to people over the 90s show as your first experience with it. But if you have read the manga, I wouldn't sleep on the 90s show. It does have a lot of good things in it. Next, we're going to be covering Memories, specifically Magnetic Rose. I'm also going to be putting this in A. So, Magnetic Rose in Memories is probably the best looking horror anime ever. It is beautiful how this looks, and horrifying at the same time. I'm not going to talk much about it because it's only 40 minutes long, and I feel like me talking about a lot of it would spoil what plays into effect. But it's basically about this group of astronauts who get a distress call from this one planet. They go to check it out. They see that it's like an old castle that they're in, and weird stuff starts happening. They start seeing things that only they know about, so it's like playing with their minds, like where it's showing them things where it's really decepting their trust in like themselves and like what's actually going on here. It's starting to make them like lose their mind and their sanity, and that's the whole point. And I won't go super deep into it because I also highly recommend watching it because it's just insane. But I would definitely put it in A tier. High School of the Dead. What can I say about this? I'm putting it in B. So, it's a zombie anime that has boobs and fan service and fighting and boobs and swords and boobs and guns and boobs. It has a lot of boobs. But I'm putting it on the list because I think it's really fun. I still do consider it horror because it is like a zombie themed show. And when they fight the zombies, it's pretty cool. And if you were to look at the fan service as like a side thing and put the fan service aside, I think the story is fun. It's not amazing at all, but it's just a fun show to watch. If you like zombies, I would recommend it. You can clearly tell that they were inspired by George Romero's like Night of the Living Dead and Dawn of the Dead and Day of the Dead because the name, High School of the Dead even. And there's locations in the manga that they visit to that were like in the movies, like they go to a mall eventually, which is Dawn of the Dead. And I know that's not in the anime, but it's just cool that they're paying homage to George Romero, even if it is with girls fighting with swords and guns that have big boobs. But I think it's fun. I really don't mind the fan service in this one. I think it's just fun. If you were to watch it, like it's just people killing zombies. There's some real stakes that are thrown at times that actually will grip you in. It's not just pure comedy. It can get pretty serious at times, and I like it because of that. So I put it in B because it's nothing incredible, but I thought it was pretty fun. Next, we're going to be going with Paranoia Agent. This is actually directed by the same guy, Satoshi Kon, who did Perfect Blue. Paranoia Agent is pretty strange. I mean, I feel like that's a theme I'm saying for a good amount of these. But Paranoia Agent is about this person going around named Shonen Bat, who goes around and hits people with a broken baseball bat. And weird stuff starts happening to people before they get hit by him. It's almost as like when things are happening to people, you can tell that they are going to be a target from Shonen Bat. And you see these things that are happening to people, and it's like, oh my god, what the hell is even going on? Like, it's very weird, and I'm probably going to put it in A. I feel like I'm repeating myself a lot when it comes to these anime, but they share a lot of common themes. It's just the plot and how it handles it is very different between a good amount of these. But I'm going to put it in A because I did like it. Next, we're going to have Boogie Pop Phantom. Not many people who are watching this might know about this one, but this is a show that was released in 2000 that is a spin-off show based off the light novel Boogie Pop and Others. I'm going to be putting Boogie Pop Phantom actually in high A. So Boogie Pop Phantom is very, very creepy. Like Lane and Perfect Blue, you're thrown with like these characters every episode. It's a different character, and you have their own scenario that you go through, and it's just very strange. Like, I want to talk more about it, but I feel it's hard to talk about these shows where it's episodic and weird stuff happens each episode. It's hard to give like a general synopsis, but basically it's this town that in the beginning of the show you see has this white beam of light blast up from the sky, and ever since then weird things start happening in the town, and it starts affecting different people. People start seeing people start being able to see things, and it's just it's very good. Like people are able to see the like glimpses of the future and the past. I recommend it. I'm putting it in A. Monster. So this also might be controversial. We started controversial. We're gonna end controversial. I don't think Monster is as amazing as people say. I watched it. I loved the first third, but I felt that after a few episodes in the middle for one arc where it just kept going between characters that I really didn't mind about, it started to lose my interest a little bit. I wish we saw more of Johan, which is the main antagonist of Monster. I really loved Dr. Tenma. I liked his character more than Johan, and that's also another hot take because people say Johan's the best character, but Dr. Tenma for me personally was the highlight of the show. I loved him. He was such a good guy, and seeing him like have to be progressively met with more and more awful situations that were all of his fault because he saved Johan from a brain injury where he got shot in the head. He was able to save him because Dr. Ten was a brain surgeon. And because him saving him, he grows up to be this serial killer. Now Dr. Tenma has to live with it and has to go try and stop Johan from causing more damage. And the show is good with how it presents more situations that just keep escalating and escalating. You think, what the hell is going to happen now? I just wish Johan had more of a presence, and I get how he's not really supposed to have like this presence because he lives more in the shadows and you're seeing the effects of what he's doing, but I would have liked to see him more. It felt like he was absent a lot from the show, and I don't really get why so many people say he was the best part if we only saw him for like 40 minutes across all 87 episodes. But I still rank it in B because there's a lot to like about the show, and I would recommend it. But I would tell people going before him, like, hey, I like Tenma more. I know I didn't cover everything that horror anime has to offer, but this is just what I've seen so far. I plan to see more down the road. Let me know if you agree or disagree with me in the comments. I'm sure a lot of people will disagree. Let me know what your favorite horror anime is. And it was good making this video. I hope to be making more videos in the future. But if you like what you see, subscribe, and hope to post more soon. And if you're seeing this on Halloween or past Halloween, regardless, you have a good one.